Dawn screamed through Earth's upper atmosphere, the scout ship trailing smoke and plasma like a wounded star. Inside the cockpit, Valari gritted her teeth against the searing pain blooming in her chest. The impact from the enemy's pulse cannons had breached her stabilizers during the skirmish above the outer colonies, and now gravity was dragging her toward an unfamiliar world with murderous intent. Blood smeared the inside of her helmet visor, vivid against the pale lavender of her skin. One of her ribs had snapped. She could feel it grinding with every breath. A gash split across her brow, leaking warmth into her eyes. Her flight suit's diagnostics flickered erratically. Communications were dead. Navigation scrambled. I kept repeating in her native tongue. Emergency landing protocol initiated. Brace for atmospheric re-entry. The ship groaned, metal straining, hull glowing red-hot. Flames licked across the viewports as the forest below surged into view green, dense and ancient. Her fingers trembled on the manual controls, muscles obeying training more than conscious thought. Branches exploded against the nose cone as the ship plowed into the canopy, screeching through trees and shattering bark in its descent. Valari's body slammed against the restraints. Then everything went sideways literally and mentally. As the world turned end over end, silence came after the chaos, heavy and absolute. Then the hiss of ruptured hydraulics, the creak of cooling metal. Somewhere behind her, a warning light blinked its final breath. Valari stirred, coughing blood, her body a ruin of bruises and pain. The ship had carved a trench into the earth, now smoking around the wreckage like a fresh scar. She forced her seat release and stumbled into the wrecked corridor, boots slipping on debris. Her legs screamed in protest, but training demanded movement. Outside, the air was cool, thick with the scent of soil and shattered pine. Alien trees towered around her, watching like silent witnesses. She collapsed to her knees, gasping. Her left arm barely worked. Her vision blurred, and then she heard them. Above the canopy, a faint mechanical hum, rhythmic, patterned, surveillance drones. Her pulse spiked. They'd tracked her descent. They would not come to rescue. They would come to finish what the fleet had started. Staggering forward, she clutched her side and pushed into the trees. Her breath came shallow, her limbs failing. Every few steps she had to steady herself against moss-covered trunks. Blood dripped from her elbow. The drone hum grew louder more than one now, scanning, sweeping. She was losing time, a break-in. The foliage revealed it, a cabin. Small wooden smoke curling from the chimney. Anachronistic, solitary, but real. Her feet moved on instinct, drawn to the promise of shelter. The porch steps blurred in her vision, closer than she. Collapsed with a hard thud against the wood, the last of her strength bleeding out with her breath. Inside. Eli Thorne froze mid-sip, his coffee cup hovering just below his lips. The sound on his porch wasn't wildlife. It was weight. Human-shaped. Deliberate. Years of training moved through him like muscle memory. Rifle in hand, he crossed the cabin, with careful silence, and peered through the window. His breath caught. A woman lay crumpled on his porch, but she wasn't human. Not fully. Her skin shimmered with a faint violet hue, luminous even beneath streaks of blood. Dark curls clung to her forehead, framing a face twisted in pain. Something about her fragility, her sheer wrongness in this world, gripped him. Another. Sound above. The hum. He knew that sound. Machines, drones, not Earth's. He looked down at the bleeding woman. She was dying. And whatever followed her wasn't coming to save her. He dropped the rifle and stepped into the morning air. Smoke still coiled lazily from the ruin in the forest, but Valari lay beneath the earth, now unconscious, wounded, and alive. Eli dragged her limp body through the hidden entrance beneath his cabin. his every muscle screaming from the weight and urgency. The trapdoor groaned shut above them, plunging the world into muffled silence and darkness, broken only by the metallic clank of bolts. Locking into place, the underground shelter was carved from old war paranoia and solitude-reinforced steel. Walls wrapped in concrete and earth, lined with shelves of canned food, old water drums, ammunition crates, and a cot he hadn't touched in months. A single battery-powered lantern swung from a ceiling hook, casting dancing shadows that made the place feel like a bunker trapped inside a memory. He lowered her carefully onto the cot, his hands trembling not from fear, but from adrenaline. And something older, something colder, something he'd buried long ago in sand and smoke on the other side of the world. She wasn't human. He knew that. The skin was too smooth, too luminous, the bones too fine, the blood too dark. But her breathing was shallow and real. Her wounds wept like anyone's. She'd looked at him before she collapsed just for a second, but that second had gripped him by the throat. He tore open his first aid kit and set to work. Sterilizer. Bandages. Splints. He tried not to stare at her features too long, how alien they were, and yet how heartbreakingly familiar. When she moaned softly under his touch, he paused. "She's in pain," he muttered. "Good, she's alive." Outside, above the thick earth roof, something mechanical passed overhead. The sound was unmistakable, a tri-engine whir, high-pitched and hungry. Surveillance drone, maybe two. He killed the lantern, plunging them into silence. Even in the dark, he could feel her heat, her shallow breaths. He waited. 30 seconds. A minute. The sound faded. Only then did he exhale. She didn't wake the first night. Eli sat across the room, cleaning his rifle in the lantern's dim glow, every movement careful, deliberate. He didn't sleep. He hadn't in days, not properly not. Since the dreams had started up again, firefights, screams, sand turning red under his boots. But tonight, with this creature bleeding on his cot, he couldn't even close his eyes. "Who the hell are you?" She stirred on the second morning, eyes fluttering, soft breath catching. And then they opened. Not human, but not empty. Violet irises, deep as galaxies, stared into him with clarity and fear and confusion all at once. He raised his hands slowly. "Easy, you're safe, you're underground. Drones passed overhead last night." Her lips moved dry, cracked, but no sound came. At first. Then softly, in heavily accented English, "Where?" Montana," he said, voice low. "Middle of nowhere." "You crashed hard." Her eyes tracked around the bunker, settling on the lantern, the bandages, then back to him. "You? Help me." It wasn't a question. It was astonishment. "I didn't exactly have a manual for patching up aliens," he muttered. "Did what I could. You were bleeding out." Her mouth twitched. "Still am. Not as bad." He brought her water. She drank slowly, hands trembling. Then her head turned sharply toward the ceiling. Her eyes widened. He heard it too. Louder this time. Drones. Multiple. Circling. She looked at him, panic flooding her expression. "They come. Not help. Not rescue." "I figured." Her hand shot out, gripping his wrist. Stronger than she looked. "They hunt, kill, not let live." Something unspoken passed between them then. An old soldier's understanding. He'd seen that same desperation in the eyes of comrades who knew the next bullet had their name. Wasn't just running from a crash. She was running from an execution. The hours stretched thin. He kept the lantern low. They whispered when they spoke. Her name was Valari. A scout from a fleet he'd never heard of. A war he couldn't imagine. Her English was broken, but fast improving. She had a quick mind, even dulled by pain. By the third night, she could sit up. By the fourth, she helped him decode pieces of what the drones were transmitting. Their search pattern was wide, relentless, but becoming erratic. They hadn't found the crash site intact. Something or someone was jamming their signals, and that made them angry. "They will burn forest," she whispered. "Clean the ground, no witness. They'd kill civilians?" Elias. She gave him a look that needed no translation. He stared at the lantern's flicker. "Then I guess we're not civilians anymore." On the fifth night, she woke screaming. Was at her side before he knew he'd moved. She was trembling, drenched in sweat, gasping in her language. He caught only fragments: fire, fleet, mother, falling. Before she quieted, he didn't ask what she'd seen. He recognized the look in her eyes. The haunted, hollow edge of someone who'd lost too much. Too fast. She reached for his hand in the dark, and he didn't pull away. By dawn, the sky above had gone quiet again, but they both knew silence could be worse than noise. The drones weren't gone. They were watching. Waiting. And somewhere in the vastness of space, someone had already reported her missing. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The forest above their heads stirred with unnatural silence. It had been 6 days since the crash. 6 days underground. 6 days of flickering lamplight and whispered words. 6 days in which the line between prisoner and guest, soldier and stranger, had blurred beyond recognition. VALAR. I sat upright now, propped against the cot, her silver-toned bandages standing out starkly against her pale violet skin. The deeper wounds were healing with startling speed, leaving behind iridescent scars that shimmered faintly in the low light. Her ribs still ached with each breath, but her mind was sharp razor, sharp and restless. Eli watched her from across the room as he checked the power supply on the last of his lantern batteries. He'd stopped pretending she might still be a threat. If she were, she would have killed him already. That trust was unspoken, fragile, and growing stronger by the hour. "I listened," she said suddenly, her voice more fluent now, "to the wind, the forest. They are quiet today." He looked up. "Yeah, too quiet." Valerie tilted her head, listening again with a predator's patience. "That means the drones wait. They know I still live, but they do not know where." "Yet," he muttered. She looked at him. "You should have left me to die." He scoffed, setting the lantern down. "You'd be surprised how many times I've heard that." "I mean it." Her gaze didn't waver. "Now you are target. I brought death to your door." "Wouldn't be the first time," he said quietly, then glanced down at the faded tattoo on his forearm. A name in Arabic script. A date. A memory burned into skin. Valerie watched his silence with eyes that had seen war across galaxies. "Eli Thorne," she said slowly, forming the name like a sacred phrase. "Why are you alone?" He looked up. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, "Because I got tired of pretending everything I did was worth it." She studied him for a long beat. "Where I come from," she said, "we call that being soul empty. When war eats more than just your body. When it eats your meaning." His breath caught. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Then she added softly, "But you are not empty. You saved me. That means there is still fire." Outside, the wind picked up again, but it wasn't natural. A low, mechanical thrum joined it, distant but steady. They both froze. The sound repeated in pulses measured, deliberate, calculating. "They're triangulating," Valerie whispered. "Using sound, heat, searching for anomalies." He stood, all. Soldier again, moving with sharp efficiency. "You said they'd burn the forest." "Yes," she said. "If they suspect a leak, that you sheltered me. They will erase all evidence, and they'll start with the source." He grabbed his coat and opened a hidden panel behind the shelves, revealing a small stack of equipment he hadn't touched in years. Military-grade field gear, buried under layers of dust and grief. Valerie stared as he began checking pieces with practiced hands. You were soldier. I was a ghost, he corrected. She stood slowly, grimacing through the pain. Then we are both ghosts. They shared a look. Not pity, not fear. Recognition. He handed her a makeshift communication scanner. Can you trace their frequency? Yes, if you have time. How much time? She closed her eyes, listening, feeling. Maybe hours. Maybe less. They moved above ground at dusk, beneath a sky streaked with smoke and the bruised colors of an oncoming storm. The air was wrong-charged. The kind of air that came before something broke. Valerie moved slower now, but with purpose. Her bare feet touched soil with reverence. She inhaled deeply, visibly shaken. This world ... smells alive. It is, Eli said. But not for long if they light it up. At the crash site, nothing remained but scorched metal and blackened trees. But Valerie knelt near a shard of her hull and placed a palm against it. It still whispers, she said. Eli glanced over his shoulder. The drone sounds had vanished again. Vanished too perfectly. We don't have much time, he warned. Valeria opened her eyes, the violet deepening with urgency. There is a failsafe in my ship's AI. It may have sent a false trail. If we can locate it. A sharp whine interrupted her close. Too close, Eli spun toward the tree line, rifle raised. A drone hovered there, silent and sleek, its glassy black body reflecting dying sunlight. It didn't move. Didn't flee. Then a red light pulsed on its underside. Down. Eli tackled Valerie as a thin beam of energy lanced from the drone, searing the ground where they'd stood. They rolled behind a boulder as the forest erupted in flickering blue light. Target acquired. A mechanical voice rasped from the drones. Belly, Scout Valerie. Confirmed. Human interference. Verified. Initiate Level 2 Purge Protocol. Valerie's face went cold. They're calling the cleansing fleet. Eli looked at her. That means what I think it means? Yes, she said, eyes narrowing. They'll burn it all. He peeked over the rock. So let's take the damn thing out. The firefight was brief but brutal. Valerie, still weak, focused on disrupting the drone signal using her scanner's overload pulse. Eli provided cover, drawing fire with precision that would have made his old unit proud. When the drone exploded in a hiss of sparks and carbon shrapnel, the forest fell back into that awful, expectant silence. They both stood in the smoking clearing, breathing hard, ash drifting like snow. It will not be the last, Valerie said. They will send more. They will come themselves. Eli turned to her, sweat and soot streaking his face. Then you better teach me how to fight them. That night, they sat by the cabin's wood stove in silence, the drone wreckage buried under meters of earth and stone. Outside, the forest was still. No more hums. No more lights. Inside, two soldiers sat across from each other, separated by species but not by war. Not anymore. Valerie's voice broke the quiet. We are no longer ghosts. Eli looked at her, eyes flickering in the firelight. No. He agreed. We're something worse. What's that? Hope. They buried the second drone by moonlight. The earth was frozen 2 inches down, forcing Eli to work the spade through roots and frost while Valerie scanned the tree line for thermal signatures. The shattered remains of the surveillance unit now. A twisted heap of black plating and exposed cores lay nearby, steaming gently from where Eli's bullet had pierced its capacitor. That made 2 drones destroyed 3 days apart. Not a good pattern. They'll know now, Valerie murmured, her voice low beneath the howl of the winter wind. Not just that I live, but that you helped me. Eli jammed the spade into the ground again with a grunt. Let them know. Her eyes flicked to him. That is a death sentence. He didn't stop digging. So's hiding forever. They worked in silence after that. Above them, the stars burned cold and remote, indifferent to the drama unfolding beneath their light. By morning, the forest had changed. The birds didn't sing. The air was too still, as if even the wind had fled. Eli noticed it first when he stepped outside to chop firewood and saw the deer tracks stop just short of the tree line, then disappear entirely. Mid-stride, he stared at the prints for a long time, the axe held loosely. In his grip, something was watching them. But not from above. From within. When he returned to the cabin, he found Valerie seated cross-legged on the rug, her fingers moving delicately through the air in a sequence of gestures he didn't understand. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Reading." He raised an eyebrow. "There's no screen." Her eyes flicked up. "To you." She gestured again, faster now. Shapes formed in the air, tiny motes of soft light dancing in response to her movements, like static caught in a magnetic field. "It's data," she explained, "encoded into light projected through kinetic memory. My people call it ethereal script. It only responds to biometric signatures." Eli watched, mesmerized. "You're reading your ship's logs." "Yes," she said. "What's left of them?" "What did they say?" Her hands paused. Her face paled, brightening almost to silver. "They ... they changed the orders." "Who?" She looked up at him, eyes wide. "My fleet, my commanders. Before my mission, we were told Earth was uninhabited, a dead planet, safe to survey. But this update dated after my departure labels Earth as quarantined." Eli frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "they knew people were still here. And they didn't care." Later, by the fire, she told him more. "There's a doctrine in our alliance. When a planet falls below a certain technological threshold, it's marked for observation only. No contact, no interference." She took a slow breath. "Unless it poses a threat." Eli's brow furrowed. "You think they see us as a threat?" "I don't know, but someone tampered with the mission logs. They wanted me to go in blind. Maybe they hoped you wouldn't come back." She didn't answer. Eli sat back, the crackle of the fire loud in the silence. His thoughts spiraled. Why lie about Earth? Why send a scout into danger under false pretenses? "Unless ... they wanted an excuse," he said quietly, "to escalate." Valerie nodded. "Yes." Over the next 2 days, their bond deepened, not just in the space between near death and survival, but in the quiet, in the small gestures, in the way Eli brewed extra strong coffee when she couldn't sleep, in how Valerie taught him to trace her people's script with his fingers, until he learned to spell her name. She slept on the cot. He stayed on the floor. But each night, they drifted a little closer until one morning he woke with her forehead resting against his chest, one hand curled loosely around his shirt. Neither of them mentioned it. They didn't have to. On the 7th night, they kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't tentative. They'd spent the evening on the porch, wrapped in an old wool blanket, watching snow fall through the branches. Valerie had asked questions about stars, about human myths. He'd told her about Orion, about the hunter chasing the Pleiades, about how ancient people made meaning out of light. And then she looked at him like she saw something burning inside him, something she needed to touch. She leaned in slowly. He met her halfway. Her lips were soft, cooler than his, but the heat that rose in his chest made his breath catch. She trembled against him, hands resting on his face like she was learning the shape of a prayer. When they finally parted, her skin had turned a luminous lavender gold. "I shouldn't," she whispered, "but I can't stop." He brushed a curl from her cheek, smiling faintly. "Then don't." They made love that night in front of the fire, not out of desperation, but out of shared gravity two bodies long denied. Gentleness finally finding it in one another. Every touch was a conversation. Every breath a confession. When she came apart beneath him, gasping words in her native tongue. He knew he'd never be the same again, but the next morning brought blood. Not hers. A warning, on the trees, carved deep into the bark in alien script. Return the scout or burn with her. Eli stared at it with clenched fists, fury rising like bile in his throat. Valari read it and went silent for a long time. Then she turned to him and said, "They know you matter to me now." He met her gaze. Good, because the moment they made this personal. The war changed. The sky fractured. Not with thunder, not with light, but with silence so complete it rang like a bell. Valari stood barefoot in the snow, staring up through the pines. Her breath curled into the air like smoke, and her skin shimmered in the weak morning light, lavender darkening to storm gray. Behind her, Eli finished stacking firewood, the rhythmic thump of split logs grounding them in a routine neither dared admit had begun to feel like home. Then the sound stopped. The wind, the birds. The world paused, as if Earth itself was holding its breath. A pulse rippled through the treetops. Low, felt more than heard. Valari dropped the axe mid-swing. Eli looked up. What the hell was that? Her voice was already distant, hollow with dread. A descent signal. From orbit? She nodded once. Not drones. Not recon. A vessel. Low orbit carrier. Class 7 minimum. They're not observing anymore. Then what are they doing? She looked at him. Retrieving me, or destroying everything trying. That night, they sat on the floor beside the wood stove, the drone remnants they'd collected laid out like broken bones between them. Valari bent over one of the twisted black fragments, fingers moving with precision as she exposed its central memory lattice. This is command-grade tech, she murmured. It shouldn't be on a survey planet. Meaning? Eli asked, crouched beside her. Meaning they didn't just send drones. They sent executioners. He studied her face in the firelight. And what happens if they don't find you? Her voice turned to steel. They sterilize the area. Burn forest, collapse caverns, salt the land. And you knew this? She looked up sharply. I was never told. I was supposed to observe, record, report back. And now? I'm classified rogue. Contaminated. Eli let out a breath. So they think I infected you. Her eyes locked onto his unflinching. They're not wrong. The next 3 days passed in a blur of movement and quiet planning. Every step Valari took left faint silver in the snow. Every glance between them held words they hadn't spoken aloud. Eli prepped rations, unburied a hidden ATV from the brush, reinforced the cabin's outer doors with steel plating he hadn't touched since his prepper days, but the truth hovered between them, like frost on breath. They couldn't run forever. You said there's a failsafe, Eli reminded her as they watched the sun dip behind the ridge. Yes, she said. Back at the wreck site, a buried beacon. I activated it the night you found me, but not for my people. He turned to her. Then who? Valari hesitated. A neutral sect within the Alliance. A humanitarian network. Off the books. Mostly ignored. But if anyone would shelter me, it's them. You think they'll come? I don't know, she said. But I had to try. He exhaled slowly. So we wait. No, she said, voice hardening. We survive. That night, a storm rolled in whiteout conditions, snow thick as smoke. Inside, the cabin glowed warm, heavy with the scent of wood and wool and heat. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Eli sat cross-legged beside the hearth, his palm resting on Valari's knee. She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, both of them lulled by the rhythm of the wind hammering the windows. Her skin was warm against his. She'd changed again, this time to deep moonlit violet. Your color, he murmured. What does it mean now? Her answer came soft. Peace, safety, and something else. He smiled into her hair. What else? She turned to him, eyes luminous with something neither of them dared name. We have a word, Zephyrin. I remember. You told me. Do you remember what it means? I do, he whispered. Home in another. Her hand found his. Fingers tangled. When? They made love again. It was not desperate. It was reverent. Slow, like memorizing the lines of a hymn. Every kiss mapped a promise. Every sigh held defiance, and afterward, as they lay tangled together in tangled sheets, she whispered, I will not lose this. You won't, he said, burying his face against her throat. Not alone. The forest burned the next day. They saw it first from the ridge trees turning to ash in great rings, blue fire spreading in unnatural patterns. Not flame, but plasma. Controlled demolition, surgical. Purge squads, Valeri said. They're clearing pathways for troop deployment. How close? Hours. Eli's hands clenched around the rifle stock. We don't have hours. Valeri turned toward him. Then we force a choice. He looked at her. What kind of choice? She met his gaze, fire in her voice. We go to the beacon site. We trigger the last signal. If my people intercept it, they'll think I'm surrendering. They'll delay destruction long enough to send a retrieval team. And if they don't? She placed her palm flat against his chest. Then we make a stand. By sunset, they reached the ruins of her ship. The beacon pulsed faintly beneath. The wreckage, half buried in snow and scorched soil. Valeri knelt beside it, her fingers flying across the interface, alien glyphs blooming with pale light. Eli kept watch, his rifle raised toward the darkening tree line. Signal away, she said. Coded as surrender. He didn't move. Now what? Now we wait, she said. They didn't wait long. A low hum broke the silence. Above them, a second sky unfold, a ship descending through the clouds like a blade made of silver light. Valeri froze. That's not my command vessel, Eli tensed. Is that good or bad? It's them, she whispered, the ones I hoped would come. The ship hovered, then landed without sound. A moment passed. Then the bay doors opened, and what stepped? Out was not an army, it was a woman. Pale violet skin, high ceremonial braids, silver robes flowing like water. She walked with the calm of someone unafraid of war and unafraid of what came next. Valeri stepped forward. The woman spoke. Scout. Valeri. You are marked for extraction under Clause 17. Valeri blinked. Sanctuary Clause? The woman nodded. You have invoked Zephyrin. Valeri's breath caught. He comes with me. The woman looked to Eli. Then, without judgment or hesitation, said, both or neither. Valeri turned, and Eli was already beside her. I've made my choice, he said. They stepped forward, together. The stars were not what he expected. They looked the same from orbit distant, glittering, ancient, but something had shifted. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the strange feeling of weightlessness not just in body, but in fate. Or maybe it was because Eli Thorne had never imagined he'd leave, Earth holding the hand of someone who wasn't even human. Valeri's fingers were wrapped tightly in his as they ascended. Her skin felt warmer than it had in the cold of the forest, glowing faintly under the cabin's shiplight. The vessel was sleek, quiet, and almost eerily organic. Its corridors curved like ribs around them, softly pulsing with veins of bioluminescent energy. No harsh lights, no metal floors, no guards, but still Eli could feel the weight of eyes. Watching, measuring the woman who had greeted them. Athra led them through a narrow corridor without a word. Her expression remained unreadable. Composed, almost too composed. Valeri kept her posture upright, but Eli could feel the tension vibrating through her. She didn't trust this ship. Not yet. And neither did he. They reached a small chamber circular, walls glowing with soft blue light that moved like liquid behind translucent panels. Athra gestured. "Wait here. Your petition for sanctuary under Zephyrin protocol must be reviewed," Valeri frowned. "I invoked it in the presence of a human witness." "That should be binding." Athra's voice was calm but cool. "It is binding, but not unchallenged." "The council has been alerted." Eli stepped forward. "Council?" Athra turned to him. "Your presence may force political realignment among several alliance factions. Scout Valeri's actions have complicated matters." Valeri's jaw tightened. "I don't care about factions." Athra studied them both. "You will." Then she left, the door sealing with a whisper behind her. The chamber was quiet, but charged. Eli paced slowly, boots echoing faintly. "This is a trap, isn't it?" "No," Valeri said. "But it may become one." Comforting. She moved to one of the panels, placed her palm against the wall. A map bloomed outward in soft light stars, lines, shifting currents. "That," she said, "is the reason they lied about Earth. Look." He stepped beside her. The map zoomed, twisting inward on a spiral of constellations, then paused over a sector he didn't recognize. "Your solar system is on the edge of an unstable fold," she explained. "A gravitational anomaly. The kind that only appears once every few millennia. So it's a gate," she whispered. "A natural corridor through subspace. Fast travel. Strategic dominance." Eli's breath caught. "And Earth sits on it." She nodded. "That's why they quarantined it. Not because you're primitive, but because they wanted no one else to see what was under the veil." Eli exhaled slowly. "You were never just scouting. You were bait." Valeri's expression darkened. "And now I've gone rogue. Fallen in love with a native. Violated the doctrine of first containment." He turned to her. "So what happens now?" "I don't know," she said. "But if the council denies our bond, if they rule it invalid," a voice cut through the chamber, "then you both will be erased." They turned. A new figure stood in the doorway. Tall, imposing, male. His skin was pale violet streaked with silver. His uniform bore 6-star commander insignia. His eyes burned with cold fire. Valeri's breath caught. "Father." The silence that followed was brutal. Eli stood frozen, instincts flaring. The man's stance was regal, unshackable, but Eli had seen killers wear less armor. "High Commander Tavern," Valeri said, voice low, formal. "You shame our blood." Tavern replied, ignoring Eli entirely. "I warned you, child. Sentiment weakens clarity. And now you stand before me with him claiming Zephyrin?" "It is not a claim. It is truth," Valeri said. "He saved me. He stood beside me. He chose." Tavern's gaze finally landed on Eli. A soldier. Damaged. Unexceptional. A relic of a planet left behind. Eli stepped forward, fury simmering behind restraint. "Say that again." "Eli," Valeri warned, but Tavern smiled. "You challenge." "Me human? I'm not afraid of you," Eli said. "You hide behind your rank and your protocol, but I've seen what war does up close. Your kind just sanitizes it." Tavern's smile vanished. "You believe you understand what you've touched?" he said, voice deadly calm. "You are a variable in a calculus that spans empires. One mating bond does not rewrite laws." "It rewrote me," Valeri snapped. Tavern stared at her for a long moment. Then, with chilling composure, said, "You are hereby stripped of command rank and recalled for genetic review."
Valeri's face drained of color. "That's exile." "No," Tavern said.
"It's cleansing." The room exploded with motion. Eli moved before he thought, but Valeri was faster, pivoting into a defensive stance that made Tavern actually pause. Her hands glowed faintly at the fingertips, her body trembling with stored kinetic energy. "No one touches him," she said. "Then fight me," Tavrin said coldly. "Prove your bond is more than delusion." Eli stepped beside her. "She doesn't fight alone." Tavrin's eyes narrowed. "So be it." But before a blow could be struck, the chamber lights flared blinding white. A new voice filled the air. "That is enough." Athra appeared again, flanked by 5 others. Elders, robed, regal, stern. "The bond is confirmed," Athra said. "He shares her resonance signature. Zephyrin is validated." Tavrin snarled. "You would sacrifice doctrine for poetry?" One elder stepped forward. "We do not sacrifice, we evolve." Tavrin turned on his heel. "You doom us." "No," Athra said quietly. "She saved us from ourselves." When the chamber cleared, Valari collapsed into Eli's arms. She trembled. Not from fear, but from release. From years of chains snapping in a single moment. "You didn't flinch," she whispered. He held her close. "Never will." And for the first time in her life, Valari felt what no war, no fleet, no doctrine had ever given her: freedom. The ship slipped through the black ocean of space like a blade of light cutting into silence. Far behind it, Earth rotated quietly blue, cloud-draped, unaware that its future had just been rewritten by a kiss, a choice, and a declaration older than empires. Valari stood at the viewport, her reflection hovering beside the stars. Her skin had shifted again, no longer war gray, no longer uncertainty lavender. Now it shimmered in shades of pale silver and sunrise violet, hues her kind reserved for something rare: victory through vulnerability. Behind her, Eli approached, silent in his steps but grounded in her presence. He'd never meant to leave Earth. He hadn't packed, hadn't said goodbye. He just looked into her eyes, heard her voice crack with emotion, and realized something terrifyingly simple: he couldn't live a life where she wasn't in it. She reached for his hand without turning. Their fingers intertwined naturally now. Reflex. "They've sent the declaration," she said softly. Eli's brow furrowed. "To who?" "The entire Concordance High Council," she replied. "All 26 sovereign species. Our bond has been formally registered under Zephyrin. It's already causing unrest." He gave a low breath. "What kind of unrest?" "Some believe it's a sign of imbalance. That humans ... are a deviation. Others, especially younger houses, see it as hope, an evolution of doctrine. A turning point," Eli grunted. "Feels like a turning point." Valerie turned to him fully, her expression unreadable for a moment. "There's more, always is." She nodded. "Because of my petition, a review of Earth's status has been triggered. The quarantine may be lifted. If it is, your world will be offered entry into the Galactic Concordance." Eli blinked. "You're saying—" "They're thinking of inviting humanity? Not all of them," she said, "but enough to force a vote." He leaned back against the bulkhead, arms folded. "Guess we'd better start practicing our diplomacy." She stepped closer, voice quieter now. "That's not the hardest part. What is?" "You'll be a symbol, Eli. You and I proof that a species once deemed too dangerous, too primitive, too wild, could hold something sacred, could form a bond not even the high laws could deny." He met her gaze evenly. "I didn't fall in love to make history." "I know," she said. "That's why it matters." They arrived at the Interstellar Concord, sanctuary, an ancient orbital station built into the ruins of a dead moon. Unlike the warships and rigid halls of Valari's command fleet, the sanctuary was warm and designed organic curves. Lush greenery suspended in glass globes, chambers lit by starlight filtered through crystalline domes. It smelled of clean air. And rainstorms here. Political firestorms raged beneath quiet conversation. A special summit was called Valari stood before the council tribunal. Eli at her side, both in ceremonial robes, hers bearing the crest of her lineage, now reactivated, with her restored rank. His, plain but dignified, marked with the sigil of Zephyrin in glimmering ink across his heart. She addressed them all, her voice steady, her posture regal, her words devastating. She spoke not just of love, but of lies, of false data, of manufactured war, of how the truth of Earth had been buried under politics and fear, and how she had found more honor in the arms of one human than in all her years beneath her commander's banners. When she finished, silence gripped the chamber. Then the votes came in, 15 in favor of immediate integration, 7 abstaining, 4 against. The resolution passed. Earth's veil was lifted. After the announcement, the two of them stood again at a viewport different. Stars now, different station, but the same feeling in their chests. We did it, Eli said quietly. She didn't answer right away. Her hand slid into his. There's one last thing, she said. He turned to her. I don't want to go back to the fleet, she said. I don't want to be a weapon anymore. Not for them. Not for anyone. He took her face in his hands gently, the same way he had that first night by the fire. Then don't, she pressed her forehead to his. I want to go to Earth, to see your world, to walk on beaches, climb mountains. Learn what your species feels like, not what your files say. I want to plant something. I want to grow. He smiled. You want a cabin? She laughed, a bright, musical sound. Maybe one that doesn't get shot out of the sky. He kissed her. I know the perfect place, Montana. Cold as hell, but good stars. She nodded. Then take me home. 6 months later, Earth welcomed its first off-world ambassador, not as a conqueror, but as family. Valari's presence didn't trigger panic. It triggered wonder. She walked beside Eli through the streets of old towns and open forests, children pointing, elders bowing, scientists weeping with joy. When she spoke her language to the sky and birds responded, some whispered she was a goddess. She wasn't. She was something better. Humanity didn't rise to her level. They met her there. Together. 1 year later. On the anniversary of her crash, Valari stood on the porch of a rebuilt cabin nestled into a pine-covered ridge. Inside, Eli stirred a pot on the stove, muttering to himself about bad coffee and too much snow. She stepped inside and smiled. Her skin had taken on a new shimmer, lately gold-tinged like dawn. He turned and paused. You're glowing. She stepped closer, placed his hand low on her abdomen. He felt it, faint, pulsing life. Are you? He began. She nodded. It is tradition. When a Zephyrin bond reaches its truest form, something new begins. Eli could only stare, joy ripping through him like sunlight. You sure? He asked, voice rough. Her eyes glittered. I'm sure. He wrapped his arms around her. Outside, stars blinked silently in the sky. Above them, ships came and went. Borders softened. Wars paused. And in a cabin built at the edge of extinction and rebirth, two souls from distant worlds found something no doctrine could erase, a beginning.